I've told you that I'm good at making predictions, never on politics, but pretty good on the direction of the world and the country. But my timing is usually off. I've been warning for years, trouble is coming. Need to make some serious cuts to government and government spending, and if the cuts aren't made, trouble. But how much time do we actually have left? There's a new book out called The Debt Bomb. It's by Oklahoma Senator Tom Coburn. He joins us now from Washington. He says, Senator, 2 to 5 years?
You bet.
What makes you say it?
Well, if you look at where we are and you look at where the euro is, and you also look at Japan has a debt to GDP ratio of 220%, who's going to buy our debt? There has to be somebody that buys our debt. Last year, China dumped $160 billion of our debt. They were a net seller of our debt. So who is it in the world that's going to buy our debt? And who has confidence? If you look last year, 80% of our debt was bought by one firm, the Federal Reserve Bank of the United States. In other words, we bought our own debt. We printed money to create debt.
Senator,
what happens when...
Do you remember when... I'm sorry to interrupt you, but do you remember when Ben Bernanke said they would never do that? He was under oath in Congress, and he said we would never monetize our own debt. We'll never do that. Why don't we bring him up on charges for lying to Congress?
Well, I don't know the answer to that. What I know is they're doing everything that they can do to keep this thing afloat, except the things that we need to do, which is to reduce the size of the federal government, to reform the federal government, to reform the tax code, so that we create some certainty and confidence in our country, and so we get our mojo back.
Okay.
We're the last rose in the vase to wilt.
And we're looking pretty, I mean, you know, a lot of people, I actually had somebody say to me in the last week, Glenn, things are getting better. I'm like, you know, you can put lipstick on a pig all you want, but it's still a pig. The fundamentals are the early stages of Greece. When I first started saying Greece is going to melt down, that was about 2.5 years ago, maybe 3 years ago.
Yeah.
Well, here it is. And where we are today is where they were.
Right, and remember, they've spent €1 trillion pushing this 6 months down the road to no avail, and the same thing's going to happen.
Okay, so...
And we can continue to do that, but that's going to undermine our kids, our family, and our country.
All right, not going to happen this year because you say it's an election year. Next year, going to happen?
Well, nobody knows exactly, but what's going to happen is the euro's going to come under attack, the yen's going to come under attack, and we're going to look good for a couple of years because we're seen as safe. But there'll be a point in time when people wonder, can you pay back your debt?
No.
And so what will happen is the interest rates on our debt will go through the roof. We're now paying under 2%. Our historical average is around 6%. If we were back to historical averages right now, that would be $650 billion additional interest a year for the federal government. That's coming in 2 or 3 years.
All right.
Everybody agrees that's going to happen.
So people like you, people like me, Tea Party, etc., all extremists. I mean, you know, when they kick Dick Lugar out, they're calling him an extremist. I hear Orrin Hatch. I mean, he said it, these extremist Tea Party members. How can you, when you have the GOP coming out and saying that these are extremists that are asking for reasonable cuts right now, got to stop it. How do you win? How do you convince the American people?
Well, I think you convince the American people by who you send to Washington. Remember, we didn't get in this trouble just because of one party or one president.
No.
The problem in Washington is the Republicans and Democrats have agreed too much, not too little, and they've agreed on the wrong things. And the way you change that is quit sending career politicians to Washington.
How do you get the, let's say Romney wins. First of all, how do you raise, I mean, I'm not going to ask you this question because I know what you're going to answer.
I don't know.
You don't know how Romney is? How Romney's going to be?
I don't know who's going to win. The point is we're not going to know. Glenn, I'd make one point with you. our problems are so imminent and so urgent, we ought to be working on them right now regardless of who's president.
I know that.
There ought to be bills on the floor of the Senate to reduce the waste and fraud and abuse in the federal government, to eliminate programs. We ought to be there now. We're not. That's poor leadership. We have failed leadership.
On both sides.
Yes, sir.
Yes. The Republicans are not doing their job. They should have massive plans that they're presenting to the American people. They're not doing it. And the Democrats are just going in the other direction. So I agree with you.
Well, let me make one point. The reason I was late for your show is we just voted on 4 budget proposals from the Republicans and Obama. His budget got 0. And we had 4 pretty good budgets put out there that would start solving the problem, create the confidence in the world financial community that will give us the time to work out of our problems.
What happens to us if the euro melts down? I mean, how?
Well, ultimately what happens to you is the kids graduating from college won't be able to find a job. The 401k that you have that you think you're going to retire on, or your IRA or your pension, isn't going to be there enough to provide what you need, because we're going to, through debasing the currency and inflation, we'll have financial repression, which is the worst hidden tax of all. It'll wipe the middle class out. It'll be extremely hard on the poor. The very wealthy will do fine, but the fact is the country will be on its nose. You'll see 20% unemployment. You'll see a decline in growth of 10 to 12% per year. An unwinding, because nobody has confidence in what we've done.
Okay, I've only got a minute here, but I want to ask you a real quick question, see if you can answer it in a minute, about regulation. This government with Cass Sunstein is so overregulating us, you can't get the American engine, the small entrepreneur, to be able to produce anything. You don't have confidence, and you also have regulation out of control. Can you root out all of the crap that Cass Sunstein has gotten out in the last 4 years?
Yes, you can. If you have a president that's committed to do it, you can do a lot of it through executive order. You can do it through changes at the EPA. You can do it by withholding funding to those agencies until they correct the mistakes they've made. And I think you underestimate the damage that this administration has done in terms of business confidence and the ability to grow small and medium-sized businesses through regulation.
Thank you very much, sir. I appreciate it. Keep up the fight. Name of the book
I will,
again.
Glenn. Good talking with you.
Thank you, sir. The name of the book is The Debt Bomb. And if I'm underestimating the problem of the damage that this president has done, we're in real trouble.